What is the Strait of Hormuz? Let's start with something simple. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway in the Middle East, just about 20 miles wide. But don't let its size fool you. This little strip of water carries about 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil the world uses each day. Oil tankers from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iraq, they all pass through this path before going to places like Europe, Asia, and yes, even the US. Iran just took a serious step. Iran's parliament has agreed to block the Strait of Hormuz if things get worse, like if war breaks out with Israel, or if the US steps in too far. They haven't done it yet, but if the top leaders in Iran say yes, they could try to stop oil tankers from passing through. And when oil stops moving, the world feels it. Why Europe is in big trouble. 1. Europe's hidden weak spot, energy. Let's go back a few years before the war in Ukraine. Europe relied heavily on Russia for energy. Russia supplied over 40% of Europe's natural gas and a good share of its oil. But when Russia invaded Ukraine, Europe said, "No more." They cut ties, they stopped buying from Russia. That sounds brave, right? But here's the problem. They didn't have a backup plan. Now, much of Europe's oil comes from the Middle East, especially from countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and the UAE. And almost every single barrel of that oil passes through one narrow waterway, the Strait of Hormuz. If Iran blocks that strait, which they've just threatened to do, Europe could lose more than a third of its oil supply overnight. That's not just a political crisis, it's an economic disaster waiting to happen. 2. Energy powers everything, and it's already shaky. Energy isn't just for cars. Europe still uses oil and gas to generate electricity, and their factories need it too, to make steel, to produce plastic, to create chemicals. Even food processing plants rely on it. Without energy, these industries slow down or shut down completely. In fact, we already saw this in Germany back in 2022. Factories closed, unemployment rose, exports dropped. If another energy crisis hits, this time from the Middle East, it won't just be bad, it'll be worse, because now there's no Russia to fall back on. 3. Inflation returns. Growth disappears. Let's talk about prices. If oil prices rise, everything else follows. Gas for your car, heat for your home, plane tickets, groceries, even the price of road repairs and construction. When people can't afford to buy and companies can't afford to produce, the economy slows down. It's a dangerous combo. Economists call it stagflation, a mix of high inflation and low growth. Sound familiar? That's what America went through in the 1970s, during the oil shocks. Europe may be heading for a repeat, but with less flexibility, more debt, and less public patience. 4. When the economy hurts, politics change. Let's be honest. When gas prices skyrocket and food becomes more expensive, people don't care about politics as usual. They get angry. They take to the streets. It already happened in France and Germany last year over fuel taxes and heating bills. Now imagine that, only 10 times worse. That anger fuels political change. Extreme parties, both far right and far left, start gaining ground. Some want to pull out of the European Union. Others say, let's stop supporting Ukraine. We have our own problems. It's no longer just about oil. It becomes about trust in government, unity in Europe, and stability in the West. Final thought. Why this matters to America. You may wonder, why should Americans care if Europe has an energy crisis? Here's why. Europe is one of America's biggest trading partners. If their economy crashes, so will exports from the US. NATO's unity depends on a strong and stable Europe. If Europe cuts support to Ukraine, Russia gains more ground. And in a global economy, what happens over there doesn't stay over there. The Strait of Hormuz may be 6,000 miles away, but its ripple effects could reach your gas pump, retirement fund, and grocery store. So yes, Europe is in big trouble, and if we're not careful, we might be next. B. So, what about the US? Why a crisis in Europe is also a crisis for America. Let's pause for a second. You might be thinking, that's all across the ocean, why should I care what happens in Europe? Well, here's the truth. In today's world, there's no such thing as over there anymore. What happens in Europe doesn't stay in Europe. It comes back to hit our economy, our investments, and even our young men and women in uniform. 5. Trouble in Europe means trouble for Wall Street and Main Street. Let's start with the economy. Europe is America's largest economic partner. More than China, more than Canada. That means we sell them our goods, we buy theirs, and our stock markets are deeply connected. If Europe faces an energy shock, their industries slow down. When that happens, they stop buying American products, from cars and machinery to software and agriculture. That hits our factories, our farms, and even your 401k. You may not see it on the news, but your retirement account? It'll feel the tremor. 6. If the Strait of Hormuz closes, our Navy might open it. The Strait of Hormuz is not just Europe's problem, it's also a vital artery for global oil, and America knows it. That's why U.S. warships have patrolled the Persian Gulf for decades. And if Iran follows through on its threat to block the strait, you can expect American destroyers and aircraft carriers deployed again, troops moved closer to the Middle East, and perhaps another conflict we can't afford, but can't ignore. And while politicians debate in Washington, guess who pays for it? You do. Through your taxes, your budget deficit, and perhaps with the lives of our young soldiers. 7. Even the Green Revolution could be delayed. Let's talk about something many Americans hope for, a future that runs on clean, green energy. Solar panels, wind farms, electric cars. Europe is leading that charge, and the US is trying to catch up. But here's the hidden twist. Going green still requires energy to get started. You need fuel to mine rare earth metals. You need ships to transport solar panels. You need electricity to build wind turbines. If oil prices skyrocket, shipping slows, and projects get delayed, suddenly that clean energy future gets pushed further down the road. And instead of moving forward, we stall, caught between two worlds, one we can't afford anymore and one we're not ready for. Final thought, this is our wake-up call. This crisis isn't just about Europe. It's about the fragility of the world we live in. One small waterway, the Strait of Hormuz, has the power to crash markets' offices, delay progress, spark conflict of stance, shake alliances. We've seen it before in the 1970s. Oil shocks, high prices, public anger, and we're seeing the warning signs again. But this time the stakes are higher, the world is more connected, and the margin for error, smaller than ever. If you're listening to this and thinking, this sounds familiar, you're right. The past doesn't just repeat, it whispers warnings. And maybe, just maybe, it's whispering to us now. Thank you for watching. If this topic matters to you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your perspective in the comments. Every voice helps keep the conversation going.